7:45 morning to you, watching and listening to Breakfast with Stephen and Anne.
Let's get a look now at this morning's newspaper front pages. The Sunday Times starts off with a line from the climate czar, who says Rishi Sunak, that's Alok Sharma by the way, he says Rishi Sunak risks undermining Britain's position as a world leader if he decides to abandon COP27.
The Prime Minister will launch a major offensive on crime, according to the Telegraph.
And the Express lead is on the government-funded £250 million yacht that Boris Johnson hoped would signify Britain's global power. Well, it's now been sunk by Rishi.
The Observer looks at the report that claims Boris Johnson will go to COP27.
And the Daily Star, oh, they must be so pleased they can get Liz Truss back into their front pages. They say that her phone was secretly hacked by Russian intelligence. Lettuce Liz, hacked by Mad Vlad.
Headline writer's dream.
It really is.
Let's go through those papers then with editor of Spike magazine Tom Slater and anthropologist Mariana Hotter. Morning to you both.
Good morning.
Tom, let's kick off with the Sunday Times, should we? And looking at Alok Sharma attacking Rishi Sunak.
Yes, as you were just trailing there, this big intervention ahead of the COP27 meeting in Egypt. So Alok Sharma, previously the president of COP, now the climate czar more broadly. Bit of an axe to grind, I think it's fair to say, as far as he's no longer attending cabinet. He's probably a bit upset about that. But some quite strong words for Rishi Sunak, saying that it's essentially a crying shame that he's not attending COP27. Of course, he's got a lot on his plate though, Rishi Sunak, hasn't he, with the kind of financial maelstrom here at home.
He'd still attend for a few hours, couldn't he?
Well, I suppose it's insofar as there's also, it's not just a sort of glad handing, there's also negotiations that go on and so on and so forth, and especially because that statement is just, days away now at this point, you can understand why he would be focusing on that, and because he is ultimately, accountable to the British people and our issues at here, not to the kind of supranational set. And also, even if your concern is about COP, it's only every few years that a kind of big agreement is struck, which is why I remember Paris and Glasgow, and we don't necessarily remember the ones in between. So I think there's
not much came out of Glasgow, to be perfectly honest.
In the end, everyone will remember Alok Sharma, shedding a tear from the, from the platform because he was concerned about the lack of movement.
Wait, but hang on a minute. We're the president of COP. Alok Sharma is the president of the whole international outfit.
Well, he was for...
No, still is now, because it's an official handover.
Yeah.
So we are currently the global leaders in the fight against climate change, except we're not really acting like it. And so even if you want to be cynical about what COP can achieve, this is simply an opportunity for the UK to put itself on an international stage and go, we're quite good at being international leaders, we're very trustworthy, we're independent, we're ambitious, we are a prosperous and functioning nation on the international stage, except we're kind of floundering that opportunity, I think.
The problem is we're not a prosperous nation at the moment, and so he's back in number 10 trying to sort that out. Isn't that a good thing?
Yes, I think he should send King Charles. We definitely do not want Boris Johnson to be trundling about.
Well, no, he's very green.
Not really. And also, how many axes does he have to grind? And how much is he the vanguard of the chaos? I think, it has to be forward-looking, it has to be progressive, it has to be ambitious, it has to be embracing a positive, brighter, more hopeful, optimistic future.
We're in the midst of such...
We're squandering it.
Because even looking back to COP, it seems like such a sort of indulgence insofar as, all this talk about green technology, which isn't there yet as far as providing cheap and reliable energy that we need. You get to a situation as we did in the past year, when the rubber really hits the road and you really need to be able to keep the lights on and so on and so forth. Again, flying out there en masse to go and engage in these kind of glorified photo op.
Surely one of the major reasons that we're in a financial crisis, one of them, is our lack of energy security and not enough forward thinking, frankly, in making sure that we were investing years ago in renewables.
Absolutely bang on.
That's all what COP27 is about. Should we at least be showing that we're still thinking that way?
Yes, and doubling down on the commitment to the future rather than going, we'll deal with that when we can afford to.
Yes, but
by which point it'll be too late.
But it's not about energy security in that sense, is it? It's about COP is about making commitments to how we're going to tackle the climate change situation. It's not actually where they're going to come away and say, well, actually, we've worked out how to fund this and how to do that and how to build more wind farms.
It partly is because each government has to pledge and then be held to account on targets that they propose.
Which we will still be doing, just without the Prime Minister being there to do it.
Yeah, this would have happened
if
it wasn't for the fact that Glasgow happened last year and the fact that there's been a lot of interest about this. COP27 would have passed, broadly speaking, without much consequence. It's not the big one. And also, we talk about our government being held to account to its commitments. It should be held to account to its electorate. And the main concern at the moment is about keeping the lights on, not about expensive and unreliable green technology, which has not been delivering.
No, I want to keep the lights on this winter, but I also want my children to live in a world that is actually survivable.
Well, yes.
I want both of those things.
Which is fair enough.
I shouldn't have to choose.
Which is fair enough, but that is not reliant on Sunak or even Charles going to COP27.
Yeah, but it looks as though we're turning our backs on all the commitments we've made thus far and might make in the future. If the Prime Minister doesn't go, or even somebody much more, somebody from a leading cabinet position.
We've got the last two Prime Ministers going, and we've got Liz Truss and Boris Johnson going.
I don't want either of them to go. Honestly, I'd rather King Charles go.
Me too.
He'd be quite good. I mean, he actually understands the issues. He cares about it. He can properly represent the UK. And he isn't involved in planning the budget.
Because he can't make...
Because he's not allowed to
but
do
his
any
very presence would signify we are
the optics.
Seriously, surely.
Yeah.
I don't want to take COPs seriously, to be honest. They don't seem to achieve anything apart from burning a load of airline fuel.
Yeah, a lot of private jets.
There you go. Oh, it's us two against these two. Mary Ann, let's have a look at the Sunday Telegraph, should we? And woke policing on Twitter.
Apparently. So, lots of debate around energy. Let's do policing now, shall we? So apparently, sources unspecified say that once the Prime Minister has sorted out the economic catastrophes that we're all facing, he's going to do a number on policing, because that's not going so well either. And we're going to go back to the basics. Have you heard that before? I have.
Back to basics.
Back to basics policing.
Well, is this something that Greater Manchester Police have done?
Well, so this is the thing. So there was the chief of the Greater Manchester Police, a chap called Stephen Watson, said that he wants to put, 18 months ago, wanted to put more officers on the beat. He wanted his force to pursue every crime lead. They reduced answering a sort of 999 call from 1 minute 20-something seconds to 7 seconds. So you phone and you immediately get put through to a call handler who can, be there and work out what needs to be done. And it meant that Greater Manchester Police came out of special measures. They've been inspected and found to be basically a failing force. And this guy has sort of transformed the force and the morale and the outputs. So more people are arrested. I don't actually know about conviction rates, because it's all well and good arresting someone, but then if you can't actually get a case through the courts and get someone charged and all the rest of it, then it doesn't really count for that much, does it? But the kind of thinking is that that's the approach that they want to roll out across all the forces in the UK, and that people ought to be, fighting actual crime rather than policing bad jokes on Twitter. I agree with that, but I think it's probably a bit of a misrepresentation to suggest that police forces around the country are policing bad jokes on Twitter for most of their time.
I don't know about most of their time, but it was quite an inordinate amount of time. I think there was a study in 2017 Times investigation. They found that 9 people a day were being arrested for online offensive.
That's not very many.
It's about 3,000 a year or something like that.
That's still not very many. Think of the number of users on Twitter and social media. Think of the harmful and genuinely illegal things that get put on social media, and there are real world consequences to those things. It's not just pixels. It's
down to the social media platforms. They've got to take more responsibility, because then it would take the burden off the police.
Yeah, definitely. But if someone breaks the law online, then it does default to the police jurisdiction. But it shouldn't be either that or investigating burglary.
Just offensive speech. And then there's that whole non-crime hate incident. It's about 150,000 reports of that which have gone through the police system. I mean, it's not everything, of course it's not. But when you think about stretched resources and all the rest of it, the fact that they're spending any time on this stuff.
No, they have to, because it's potentially illegal. It's just that they need to be well funded and resourced and supported enough.
Published online. That's the point.
Yeah.
It's up to the social media platforms, surely.
But also, we should have a police force that's got enough money that it can actually appear at someone's house when you've been burgled, as well as stopping something that is inciting racial violence against a group or a person.
Got to prioritise.
Yes and no. You should also have the money to be able to do all your job, not just a bit of your job.
It would be nice, but we haven't.
That would be nice.
Money is one thing we haven't got, which is a problem. mind you, some people have got money, Tom, according to the Sunday Mirror, and they've been giving it to Rishi Sunak.
Yes, so fossil fuels aid rise of Rishi is the headline here, talking about essentially over a quarter of the £530,000 which was donated to his leadership bid, the full-fledged one in the summer, came from people who have interests, it says, in oil, gas or aviation. So essentially trying to suggest here that he's sort of bought and sold by the fossil fuel industry. There's some quotes in here from Ed Miliband, of course, the Shadow Climate Secretary, essentially suggesting this is why he's gone slow on a lot of these climate questions, which I think, aside from how you feel about those questions, doesn't seem a particularly fair representation, as far as he was the Chancellor who, with Boris Johnson, really pursued net zero with the passion of a convert. He's a bit of a break on these things, as far as he's quite a pragmatic figure, and as we saw with lockdown, he also tends to be the sort of person as to say, well, how are we going to pay for this, or so on and so forth. Maintain the fracking ban. I mean, I think these are things to his detriment. I think we need all the energy we can get at this particular point. But I think this particular attack line, I just don't know if it's going to work, just insofar as, broadly speaking, he has been part of an administration which is, as I say, pursued net zero with the kind of...
But when you accept donations from large companies like oil companies or fossil fuel companies, you do take... It does compromise you politically, surely it does.
Well, it's difficult because we sort of get into a situation of guesswork and kind of reading into their motivations. Because, I mean, also he did impose that windfall tax, which again was not the sort of thing you would do if you were in the pocket of the oil industry.
Which is now being extended.
So it is the sort of thing where we obviously money in politics is a perennial problem, and we can definitely have a discussion about how do you rein that in, but at the same time, when it gets to a situation where you just assume everyone is in the pocket of everyone else, just always assuming bad faith, I don't think that's a good position to be in either.
No. Look, you were bleating on about optics earlier on. No, but optics are going there. No. It's not an offensive term. I like sheep. Anyway. No.
Go on.
Mary, the Sunday Express says...
Good job, we're friends.
In terms of optics, is looking at the lecterns used at number 10.
I love this story. It's my favourite story of all the Sunday papers. It's looking at the different lecterns of the Prime Ministers since David Cameron.
They always have a different lectern.
Different lectern. It appears to always be made of wood.
That's a waste of money.
I'm sure maybe they reuse the other ones. They don't just like set fire to them or throw them in the back garden.
Crazy.
Maybe they get to take them home. Maybe Liz Truss has one instead of a coat bag.
Very nice.
So the question is, I don't know if you've got the picture of this.
The picture.
So David Cameron had a sort of flamboyant hourglass-shaped sort of carved wood number.
Yeah.
Theresa May, a straight and simple curved pole.
It was dull, wasn't it?
Boris Johnson, a bit of a sort of shield shape, suggesting that perhaps he was protecting himself from the onslaught.
Right.
Fill in the blanks as to why. Liz Truss had sort of like Jenga blocks stacked in a twist.
It's lovely, actually.
It was sort of
there we are. There we've got
the kind of suggestion, perhaps, that what you see there is instability, a kind of a carefully but slightly wobbly pyramid of hope and faith. And Rishi Sunak has gone for steady, straight, no nonsense.
About half a foot shorter than the rest, probably.
Well, that would be the only good reason for different lecterns to me, is obviously
and no frills
at different heights, wouldn't you?
Yes.
I have to say, I like David Cameron's the best out of all of those.
Yeah, I think so.
A bit sinuous, a bit curvy, a little bit sexy.
Yeah, but hourglass.
Well, I don't know. I wonder if that's a bit too flashy
country,
for this kind of
every other country
austerity.
makes pronouncements
Going
from
into
the White House or some big place, usually indoors with lots of flags behind them and everything. We get out this lectern and you can see that the power cable trailed across the road, can't you? And all this business, the cat's always watching. And I just wonder what it looks like to other countries. It looks so amateur.
You have to sort of stand outside your front door to like, oh, hey, this is the news from number 10.
And now the roar of protesters always in the background, making it sound like a war zone.
They're kept as far back as possible, you can hear.
Sort of haven't got a driveway to stand in, have you? You've got a bit of a pavement straight onto
Like literally standing on the street.
It's only Margaret Thatcher who closed Downing Street off, wasn't it? Before then, you could just wander.
Oh, really? Could you walk up?
Yes, you could.
Oh, wow.
But that
I
was
always think it'd be quite nice if they had a few flowers. Like, it always looks very
How
sparse and
much does
barren.
it cost?
Well, that's true.
Where's the public money?
Perennial, not not the ones that you have to buy.
And you
with
see,
lots of,
all of the world's
plastic
media
waste.
opposite, and the commentators who are popping up on the news every so often, they have to crouch right down so that the photographers can take pictures over their heads. It's just so amateur the way we do it. Do you think?
It is, yeah.
I think it's raw.
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 I mean, they're quite exposed, aren't they? There's none of that sort of backdrop and fanciness where it's all like, smoke and mirrors and a bit theatrical. It's someone standing in a street
And then they
having
have
to
to
kind
turn
of
around and
hold
walk back in
themselves
the
to
door.
account.
I never say they're getting all of this. I like Teresa as a person. I mean,
It was a
I think
very,
she was a
very
values
ordinary-
politician.
it's an.
I mean, that looked as though it's from
Joel
GBNEWS, doesn't it?
Not there's anything wrong with being.
Or Sainsbury's Dudar or whatever other.
But yes, it
it's
does.
very ordinary. It looks as though she might have made it herself.
It does, but yeah. It's not.
But I quite like that, a sort of like no nonsense. It's not about the flash and the show, because she's making it's a distinction between her and David Cameron, what came before, isn't it? Partly, but I'm taking this seriously. I think Rishi Sunak has gone back to it. I'm taking this seriously.
I can understand why Liz Truss liked hers, because it is quite an unusual design. I quite like that. But
I mean, you would if it had all gone well. You'd be like,
Well,
that was
yeah.
a really good lecture.
Yeah.
Whereas now you're like, well,
I
that
wonder
didn't
if
work
it did
out.
get
did it?
given them at the end of their tenure.
We
Take
should
that
find out.
with you.
Yeah.
Stick it in the corner and put a plant pot on the top.
Yeah, it'd be all right, wouldn't it? Be a collector's item, I should imagine.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, she could flog it on eBay, couldn't she? Or similar auction sites that are available.
Yes, quite right. Marianne, Tom, thank you. We're done with you for now. Thank you
Okay,
very much.
right off. Bye.
You may leave.
There's a lot more to talk about. Next time, maybe we want to talk about Liz Truss's phone being allegedly hacked. Or, no,